sleek black car splashes you with mud on purpose. The window rolls down, and a wealthy woman laughs at your misery. Destiny scrubbed floors for the wealthy until one of them chose to destroy her dignity. What that rich woman didn't realize was that someone powerful was watching every second. If you love interesting stories like this that expose the truth, please give this video a thumbs up and tell us in the comment section where in the world you are watching this video, and also do well to smash that subscribe button. Have you ever had a day when life seemed determined to test every ounce of strength you had left? Not with loud crashes or dramatic scenes, but with small, cruel moments that cut deeper than they should? Destiny Jackson was living through one of those days. The clock showed 5:17 p.m. when the rain finally stopped falling over Maplewood Heights, Connecticut. It wasn't enough rain to flood the streets, just enough to leave dirty puddles scattered along the expensive neighborhood curbs. The kind of puddles that seem to appear exactly where you need to walk. And Destiny, she was always so careful about where she stepped. She stood at the edge of Rosewood Avenue, the type of street where every house had a name instead of just a number, where gates only opened when you spoke the right words into fancy intercoms. She had just finished her final cleaning job of the day. Her back screamed with pain, her worn sneakers were soaked through, and her shoulder ached from hauling a heavy bag of cleaning supplies from house to house all afternoon. Her work uniform, a simple navy shirt and tan pants, wasn't made for comfort, but it was spotless. She was always spotless. That meant everything to her. Destiny was checking the bus schedule on her cracked phone when she heard the sound. A low, threatening rumble coming from behind her. She looked up and saw it approaching, a gleaming white Mercedes SUV moving slowly around the curve. She knew that car. More importantly, she knew exactly who was driving it. Behind the wheel sat Victoria Ashford, the kind of woman who moved through the world like she owned every inch of it. Her platinum blonde hair was pulled back so tightly it looked painful, and her designer sunglasses sat on her face like a shield, even though the sun had already set. She was the type of wealthy that made working people disappear from her sight, as if they didn't deserve to share the same air. Destiny had cleaned Victoria's mansion once. Just once. The job had ended without a single word of thanks, without even basic human acknowledgement, and definitely without any explanation of why she was never called back. Their eyes met through the windshield for one electric moment. Destiny instinctively took a step back from the curb. She shouldn't have needed to move. There was plenty of room on the wide street. But something dark and dangerous in Victoria's stare told her to get out of the way. Then the Mercedes jerked sharply to the right. The front tire plowed straight through the largest, muddiest puddle on the entire street. The explosion of filthy water hit Destiny like a wall. Muddy, freezing liquid soaked through her pants, her work shirt, even splashed up into her face. She gasped, her body jolting from the shock of the cold before the humiliation even had time to sink in. The Mercedes didn't slow down. It didn't pause. It glided past her like nothing had happened at all. But Destiny had seen it. That cruel smile that flashed across Victoria's face right before she hit the gas pedal. Her lips had curved into a cold, satisfied smirk. This wasn't an accident. This was a choice. A deliberate act of cruelty. Destiny stood there dripping, her fists clenched around the straps of her soaked bag, her jaw locked tight, her heart pounding against her ribs. She didn't move right away, didn't scream, didn't break down crying. She just stood there in complete stillness. The kind of frozen moment that comes when you're deciding whether your spirit will shatter or fight back. But across the street, hidden in the shadows, someone else had witnessed everything. Not every expensive car catches your attention in a neighborhood like Maplewood Heights. But a white Mercedes deliberately swerving to humiliate a young woman? That definitely gets noticed. From his position near the corner office building, Marcus Chun had seen the entire cruel display. He wasn't supposed to be standing outside. Not exactly. Marcus had stepped out to take an important phone call in private, away from the noise of the team meeting echoing through his office walls. The call had ended just moments before the attack. He was halfway through typing a text message when he saw it happen. Watched that white SUV move toward the curb like a predator stalking its prey. Then came the water explosion. It hit her with devastating force. Not a light spray, but a complete soaking that left her looking like she'd been blasted with a fire hose. Marcus actually winced watching it happen. At first, he expected the driver to stop, to roll down the window and apologize profusely. Instead, nothing. Absolutely nothing. That wasn't just any car. That was Victoria Ashford's Mercedes. And that young woman now standing motionless and drenched, with muddy water streaming down her legs like tears, he recognized her too. Her name was Destiny Washington. She was one of the local workers hired through a community job program that his foundation had helped fund the previous year. Marcus had met her at the Oakdale Community Center when the program first launched. She had been quiet but intensely focused, asked thoughtful questions, took careful notes. She was one of those people who carried their struggles silently, like an invisible weight they'd learned not to complain about. He remembered her specifically because she hadn't come asking for charity. She had come asking for a chance. Marcus didn't move immediately. His eyes followed the Mercedes as it disappeared behind the perfectly manicured hedges surrounding the Ashford estate. Then he looked back at Destiny. She still hadn't wiped her face clean, hadn't moved a single step. She just stood there soaked in a silence so heavy he could feel it pressing against his chest from across the entire street. Marcus pulled out his phone again, but this time not to send a text. He took a photograph, not of her. He would never violate her dignity that way. Instead, he captured the back of the Mercedes just before it turned the corner. The license plate, the make and model, the exact moment of escape. Then he crossed the street. "Excuse me," he said gently, his voice soft and careful like he was approaching a wounded animal. "Are you all right?" Destiny blinked, as if she hadn't noticed him standing there. Her mouth opened to speak, but no words came out at first. He waited patiently. She finally whispered, "Did you see what just happened?" "Yes, I saw everything." She looked away quickly, embarrassed. He could see the war happening behind her eyes. The voice in her head saying, "Just forget about it," battling against the fire building in her stomach. "I don't even know what I did to make her hate me," Destiny mumbled. "I just cleaned her kitchen once. I wasn't even there for more than 2 hours." Marcus nodded. He could tell she wasn't looking for pity, just trying to make sense of senseless cruelty. "What's your name again?" he asked kindly. She glanced at him uncertainly. "Destiny. Destiny Washington." "Marcus Chun," he replied, offering a genuine smile. "I think we met last year at the Oakdale Center. You were asking about business licensing fees for your cleaning company. That stopped her cold. You remember that conversation?" "Of course I remember. You're not the type of person anyone forgets." Destiny looked down at her mud-soaked pants, then back toward the road where the attack had happened. When she spoke again, her voice was steady and strong. "She did it on purpose. I know she did." She looked at him again, and this time there was something completely different burning behind her eyes. Not shame anymore. Not even anger. It was pure determination. What Destiny didn't know was that her story was about to become much bigger than this one cruel moment. The worst part wasn't the freezing mud, or the ruined work clothes, or even the silent stares from passing cars that pretended not to see her humiliation. The worst part was being reminded exactly where people like Victoria Ashford believed she belonged in the world. Destiny sat on the cold metal bus bench, still damp and shivering, her arms wrapped tightly around herself like she was holding her spirit together. She didn't cry. Not because it didn't hurt like hell, but because she'd learned years ago that crying in public only made people more comfortable pretending you didn't exist. Marcus had offered to drive her home. She'd politely said no. Sometimes you need to sit alone for a few minutes to process what just happened, even if the bench is wet and uncomfortable. She scrolled through her phone without really seeing anything at first. Then her thumb stopped on an old document she'd been working on for months. A business plan called Jackson Cleaning and More. A fresh start, room by room. That name meant the world to her. It wasn't just about scrubbing floors and washing windows. It was about dignity. It was about making people feel proud of their homes, especially when life was falling apart around them. She'd been raised by her grandmother in a tiny 2-bedroom apartment that housed 6 people. Clean meant order. Order meant peace. Order meant hope. When Destiny turned 20, she got her first real job mopping floors at a downtown motel. It wasn't glamorous work, but it was honest work. Over the next 5 years, she hustled through every kind of job, restaurants, office buildings, and finally the expensive homes in neighborhoods like Maplewood Heights. The money was better in the wealthy areas, but the looks, the silence, the invisible walls, those never changed. Then there was Victoria Ashford. Destiny had cleaned her mansion just once, filling in for another worker who had called in sick. She remembered how Victoria never said hello, never offered water on a hot day, never made eye contact even once. That afternoon, Destiny had accidentally knocked over a small silver picture frame near the fireplace. Nothing broke. She immediately picked it up and cleaned everything perfectly. But she had seen Victoria watching from the hallway with cold, judging eyes. No words were spoken, just that look, like Destiny had contaminated the air simply by breathing it. The next day, the cleaning agency told her she was no longer needed for any assignments in that neighborhood. She hadn't thought about it again until today. Now she couldn't stop thinking about it. This wasn't really about muddy water or a swerving car. This was about power. This was about someone using their wealth like a weapon to remind her of her place. Destiny sat up straighter and opened her phone's notes app. She started typing, not for her business plan this time, but for her own heart. She tried to make me small today, but she doesn't know I've already been invisible. I've been treated like I don't matter. I've smiled when I wanted to scream, but I never let it destroy who I am. Today she got me wet, but she didn't break me. She never will. She saved the note and locked her phone. The next bus wouldn't arrive for 12 more minutes. She wiped her hands clean on her bag and looked up. That's when she saw Marcus again. He was standing beside a black car at the corner, not waving or calling out, just quietly waiting. Not because he thought she couldn't take care of herself, but because some part of him understood that this moment was about something much bigger than both of them. Back in his office, Marcus sat at his desk, his eyes still fixed on the street through the large window. He usually didn't get personally involved in situations like this. But this wasn't just business anymore. This was about character. This was about what kind of person he chose to be. He pulled up the guest list for the upcoming Maplewood Heights Community Excellence Gala. It was the kind of fancy event where old money mixed with new donations, where everyone's reputation was polished to perfection and apologies always came too late. Victoria Ashford was listed as the head of the organizing committee. He scrolled down further. Destiny Washington. Her name had been quietly added to the nominee list 2 weeks earlier. He remembered personally signing her nomination. She didn't even know about it yet. Marcus leaned back in his leather chair. Victoria had made her move. Now it was time for him to make his. But Destiny wasn't the only one with a history in this neighborhood, and wealthy communities like this one had very long memories. 2 days later, Destiny found an unusual piece of mail waiting for her. It wasn't the typical stack of bills and advertisements. This came in a thick, expensive white envelope with a gold seal on the back. Her name was written in elegant, formal letters across the front. Miss Destiny Jackson. She almost threw it away, thinking it was some kind of sales pitch or mistake. But when she opened it, she found something that took her breath away. Dear Miss Washington, we are deeply honored to inform you that you have been selected as a nominee for the 15th Annual Maplewood Heights Community Excellence Gala. Your outstanding commitment to integrity, community service, and professional excellence has not gone unnoticed. Please accept our invitation to attend the ceremony on Saturday, May 18th. Destiny read those words 3 times before they started to feel real. She sat down at her small kitchen table, still holding the envelope like it might disappear if she let go. She thought about calling someone, her grandmother, her best friend Keisha. But for the next 10 minutes, all she could do was stare at the invitation in complete shock. She had no idea that Marcus had fought for her nomination. She didn't know that anyone had been paying attention to all the work she'd been doing quietly in the community. But someone had noticed. Someone had decided she deserved to be in a room she'd never imagined entering. The kind of room Victoria Ashford had never been excluded from in her entire privileged life. Destiny didn't own anything appropriate for a gala. No formal dress, no fancy shoes that didn't cause pain. But sitting there at her kitchen table, surrounded by the smell of cleaning supplies and yesterday's coffee, she made a decision that would change everything. She was going to that gala, even if she had to wear her best church dress and department store shoes. She was going to walk into that room and claim her place. Meanwhile, across town in her sprawling estate on Hillcrest Drive, Victoria Ashford was sipping expensive wine while reviewing the event seating arrangements. She wasn't just on the organizing committee. She controlled who spoke, who sat where, who got recognized, and who got forgotten. Her assistant, a nervous young woman named Emma who always walked too fast and talked too quickly, pointed out something strange on the nominee list. There's a name here I don't recognize. Destiny Washington. She's nominated for the Community Service Award. Victoria's eyes narrowed dangerously. Destiny? She repeated, the name tasting bitter on her tongue. Emma nodded quickly. Yes, ma'am. She was added to the list recently. I think she works in the neighborhood cleaning program or something like that. Victoria didn't respond immediately. She turned toward her massive window overlooking the manicured gardens, swirling her wine glass slowly. She remembered that girl perfectly. She remembered the day she had her removed from the cleaning schedule. She remembered 2 days ago when she had deliberately humiliated her on the street. The help doesn't belong in the spotlight. That was Victoria's world. Unspoken rules and perfectly maintained appearances. Now here she was again. That same girl who had dared to exist in her space. This time trying to step through a door that was never meant for people like her. Victoria set down her wine glass and smiled. But it wasn't the kind of smile you'd want to see in a photograph. It was the kind that meant someone was about to get destroyed. Move her seat to the very back of the room, she told Emma coldly, and make sure she's not included in any of the official photographs. But isn't that against the rules? Victoria cut her off with a look that could freeze blood. Emma immediately backed down. Yes, ma'am. I'll take care of it right away. Victoria turned back to her view of the perfectly controlled world outside. This was the difference between people like her and girls like Destiny. She didn't wait to see how things would play out. She made sure they played out exactly the way she wanted. But the problem with trying to control every spotlight is that you never know who might be watching from the darkness. Saturday night arrived faster than Destiny had expected. The days leading up to it were a whirlwind of thrift store visits, YouTube makeup tutorials, and borrowed confidence from friends who believed in her more than she believed in herself. Keisha, her best friend since middle school, came over to braid her hair and lent her a pair of silver earrings she'd been saving for a special occasion. Destiny ended up choosing an elegant black dress that fit her perfectly, modest but stunning. The kind of outfit that made her stand taller and walk with purpose. Even when her heart was racing with nerves, she looked at herself in the mirror one final time before leaving, whispered, "We're really doing this," and stepped into a taxi that would take her to a completely different world. The Community Excellence Gala was being held at the Grand Marriott Hotel in downtown Maplewood Heights. The kind of place where everything smelled like expensive perfume and old money. Crystal chandeliers hung from painted ceilings. Gold details covered every surface, and soft classical music floated through the air from a live string quartet. Destiny walked in alone. No date, no family member for support. Just her name on an official list and her shoulders held high with quiet dignity. She approached the check-in table with confidence she didn't entirely feel. The volunteer looked up her name, flipped through several pages, then handed her a small card. "You'll be seated at table 31, the woman said without making eye contact. Destiny nodded politely and made her way across the enormous ballroom. The room was packed with people in designer tuxedos and $1,000 gowns, expensive jewelry catching the light, conversations so artificial you could practically see the fakeness floating in the air. Table 31 was located in the far back corner of the room, practically hidden behind a pillar next to where the servers entered and exited. A clear message about where someone like her was expected to sit, as far away from the important people as possible. She sat down quietly, trying not to let the insult show on her face. From across the room, Marcus Chun had just finished a conversation with the mayor about community development funding. He scanned the seating arrangement and immediately spotted Destiny isolated in the shadows, nowhere near where the nominees were supposed to be seated. He excused himself mid-conversation and walked directly to her table. "Destiny," he said, leaning down so his voice wouldn't carry to other tables. "They put you all the way back here?" She tried to shrug it off with a forced smile. "Maybe they ran out of space up front." "No," Marcus said firmly. "That's not what this is about at all." Before she could respond, a loud voice echoed through the sound system. "Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the 15th Annual Maplewood Heights Community Excellence Gala." It was Victoria Ashford, standing at the podium in a floor-length black gown covered in silver details that probably cost more than most people's rent. She commanded the room like she owned not just the evening, but the entire building. Her smile was absolutely perfect. So was her polished, practiced tone. As always, we gather tonight to celebrate the exceptional individuals who remind us what makes our community so special, so strong, so united. Destiny watched with her lips pressed together in a tight line. She couldn't decide what hurt more. The way Victoria's voice floated so effortlessly through the room, or the fact that everyone else seemed completely blind to what was really happening. But someone else was paying very close attention. From the media section, a local journalist named Sarah Martinez had been covering community stories for over a decade. She'd been quietly tipped off by Marcus earlier that week about a nominee who was being deliberately overlooked and mistreated. She'd come with her camera, her notebook, and a mission to shine a spotlight on someone who wasn't supposed to be forgotten. When Destiny's name was completely skipped during the opening recognition of nominees, Sarah's eyes narrowed with suspicion. She started taking detailed notes about everything she was witnessing. As the night continued, the awards ceremony began. One by one, honorees were called to the stage to receive their recognition and applause. When they reached the community service category, the presenter cleared his throat dramatically. "Our next award goes to someone whose tireless efforts have quietly transformed lives throughout our community. Miss Destiny Washington." Destiny felt her heart stop. It took a full second for her brain to process that they had actually called her name. A few heads turned to search for where she was sitting. Marcus stood up and gestured for her to rise. Destiny felt every single eye in that room watching her as she made the long walk through the tables, her heels clicking softly against the marble floor. her heart pounding so loud she was sure everyone could hear it. She walked past table after table of wealth and privilege, including the one where Victoria sat frozen in shock. Their eyes locked as Destiny passed by, but this time, Destiny didn't look away. She didn't shrink. She didn't apologize for existing. Victoria's perfect smile cracked for just a moment. Destiny climbed the steps to the stage and took her place behind the microphone. She looked out over the sea of faces, wealth, comfort, and power all wrapped up in polite expressions and expensive clothing. And there, sitting 5 rows back with a wine glass clutched in her manicured fingers, sat Victoria Ashford. Destiny cleared her throat and made a decision that would change everything. "I wasn't supposed to be here tonight," she began, her voice soft but growing stronger with each word. "And I don't mean that in a fake humble way. I mean I literally wasn't supposed to be here. Not at this microphone, not on this stage, and definitely not on any nominee list." A few nervous chuckles rippled through the crowd. "I clean houses for a living," she continued, her voice carrying clearly through the silent room. "I clean offices and apartments. I've worked for people who never learned my name, and some who never bothered to say it out loud. And that was fine with me, because I know exactly who I am." The room grew completely quiet. "I'm here tonight because someone saw my worth when I thought I was invisible. Not because I'm special or different, but because I showed up every single day and gave my absolute best. Because I believed that even when you're invisible to the people in power, it doesn't mean you're not worthy of being in the same room with them." She paused, letting those words sink deep into every heart listening. Then her eyes found Victoria's face in the crowd. Some people use their power to build walls, to divide people, to remind others where they think they belong in the world. Victoria sat perfectly still, but her grip on the wine glass had tightened until her knuckles turned white. "I've experienced this cruelty firsthand. People who swerve their expensive cars through puddles on purpose. People who move names off programs, change seating arrangements, and rewrite stories. All to make someone like me feel worthless and invisible." The room was so quiet you could hear a pin drop. "But here's what I've learned," Destiny said, her voice rising with power and conviction. "You can move me to the back of the room. You can try to erase me from your photographs. You can splash mud on my work clothes and try to humiliate me in public. But what you absolutely cannot do is erase my name from people's hearts, from their lives, or from the good work I've done in this community." A wave of agreement started moving through the crowd. Quiet applause began, then grew louder and more passionate. "I didn't ask to become a story, but now that I am one, I'm going to own every single word of it." She stepped back from the microphone, not waiting for permission, not waiting for Victoria's reaction, simply done speaking her truth. The room exploded into genuine applause. Nothing polite or restrained about it. The kind of clapping that echoed through crystal chandeliers and expensive decorations like truth finally being set free. Marcus stood up first, clapping slowly and steadily with deep respect. Sarah Martinez was already typing frantically on her phone, sending updates to her editor. And Victoria Ashford? She didn't clap at all. She stood up stiffly, grabbed her designer purse, and slipped quietly out the side exit before dessert was even served. Nobody followed her. Nobody missed her presence. Destiny walked back toward her table, but she was no longer sitting at the edge of the room. She was standing in the center of something much bigger than herself. People stopped her every few steps to shake her hand and share their own stories. A city council member offered to connect her with potential new clients. A high school teacher asked if she would come speak to his students about courage and dignity. She had arrived that evening still carrying the shame of being soaked in mud. Now she was glowing with the light of her own truth. Back at her table, Marcus leaned toward her with genuine admiration. "How are you feeling?" he asked. Destiny smiled with complete honesty. I'm not just good. For the first time in my life, I'm truly seen. And now that people can see me, I'm never going to let them forget I exist. The next morning, the Maplewood Heights Daily News ran a front-page story with the headline, "From cleaning cloth to microphone, the speech that shook our community." There was a powerful photograph of Destiny standing at the podium, her eyes bright with purpose, her hands open like she was offering truth to everyone willing to receive it. Sarah Martinez's article didn't hold back any details. She wrote about the mud attack, the seating manipulation, and the deliberate attempts to erase Destiny from the evening. She didn't mention Victoria Ashford by name, but everyone who mattered knew exactly who she was writing about, especially Victoria herself. Destiny's phone buzzed constantly throughout the day. Friends she hadn't spoken to in years reached out with congratulations and support. Local businesses offered free services. A boutique in the downtown area said they would love to sponsor her wardrobe for future speaking events. But what mattered most to her wasn't the attention or the offers. What truly mattered was the email she received that afternoon from a complete stranger. "Dear Destiny, I clean houses too. I've been working in this city for 15 years and felt invisible every single day. I watched the video of your speech 4 times last night. I just wanted you to know. You made me feel proud of my work for the first time in my entire life. Thank you for having the courage to speak for all of us." Destiny read those words twice, then sat back in her chair with tears of joy in her eyes. This was why her speech had mattered. Not for the applause or the recognition, but because somewhere in the city, someone like her was walking a little taller today. 1 week later, Destiny launched the website she had been dreaming about for over 2 years, JacksonCleaningAndMore.com. It wasn't fancy or expensive, but it was completely hers. She listed her services, created contact forms, and featured testimonials from clients who truly respected her work and her character. Marcus even wrote a featured review calling her the kind of person who brings order, care, and dignity to everything she touches. Within a month, she was booked solid for the next 3 months. Meanwhile, Victoria Ashford had become noticeably absent from community events and social gatherings. No public statements, no interviews, no appearances at the charity function she used to dominate. She had gone completely silent. The social circles that once revolved around her wealth and influence had quietly started to distance themselves. People remembered what they had witnessed, even if they were too polite to discuss it openly. At the Oakdale Community Center, where Destiny had once sat quietly in the back row taking notes and hoping to be invisible, she was now being asked to lead workshops for young women starting their first jobs in domestic work. She brought the same worn tote bag and sometimes wore the same work uniform. But now she carried a completely different story to share. "You don't need to wear an expensive suit to earn respect," she told a group of young women one evening. "You just need to respect yourself long enough for the world to catch up and notice." Keisha, her best friend, stood in the back of the room that night with tears of pride in her eyes. "You were always meant for something bigger than what they tried to give you," she whispered as Destiny stepped down from the speaking platform. Destiny smiled with quiet confidence. "I just had to stop waiting for someone else's permission to be great." There were still difficult days ahead, still long hours of hard work, still clients who refused to make eye contact or learn her name. But the difference now was that she knew exactly who she was, and there was absolutely no going back to making herself small for anyone's comfort. She used to wait nervously at bus stops, hoping not to get splashed by passing cars. Now she walked confidently down the middle of every street she traveled. Because here's the truth that Victoria Ashford never understood. Mud only sticks to you if you choose to let it define you. Some people believe that real power only exists in bank accounts, job titles, luxury cars, and gated communities. But authentic power, the kind that actually changes the world, comes from standing up when someone tries to destroy your spirit. It comes from walking into rooms that weren't built for people like you and refusing to apologize for taking up space. Destiny Washington didn't change the entire world that night at the gala. She didn't win millions of dollars or land on magazine covers or become famous overnight. She didn't need any of that. She accomplished something much more difficult and meaningful. She held her ground, spoke her truth, and let that truth echo loudly enough to force people who had been pretending not to see her to finally open their eyes and really look. That's the part nobody tells you about real courage. Sometimes the most revolutionary thing you can do is simply refuse to be erased from your own story. And for every destiny out there, every person who has been stepped on, passed over, talked down to, or made to feel like they don't belong in spaces they've earned the right to occupy, remember this powerful lesson. You don't have to shout to make your voice heard. You just have to speak your truth when it matters most. So if you're reading this story and you've ever been splashed with mud by someone who thought they were better than you, don't let their cruelty stop your progress. Build your dreams anyway. Stand tall anyway. Show up anyway. Speak up anyway. Because one day, the very people who tried to ignore your name will have no choice but to say it out loud with respect. If this story touched your heart, share it with a friend, a family member, or someone who needs to remember their own worth today. And never forget, even when the world tries to cover you in mud and shame, you are still absolutely worth being seen, heard, and celebrated. The end.